Hey, Deserved listeners, interviews, cast members, Love is Blind, Season 3. Let's watch.
It was more of a pride thing when he broke up with me, because I was like, you know what? I want to break up with you before you break up with me, you know?
So, I mean, I'll take her word for it, but I don't want to crap on her parade with Matt, essentially, but it does, what do you think? Does that sound likely, or am I just trying to fit everything into the narrative that the show edited or something? Let's rewind.
I felt like, yeah, that might be boring to some people, but that doesn't mean that I don't deserve love. And I felt in that moment that he was judging me just for not going deep, whatever that meant. So it was more of a pride thing when he broke up with me, because I was like, you know what? I want to break up with you before you break up with me, you know?
I mean, if that's true, that is notable. I mean, if we just go down that road, who knows? Then that is so. So she's claiming she wanted to break up with him, and because he broke up with her first, that upset her. That's why she was crying for seemingly a while afterwards, and that's why she was upset. That's interesting. I mean, if that's true, that presents its own kind of issue. Now, it's a better story for her and Matt that she either fully believes or is trying to, construct or something. Imagine that. So imagine that, well, we just have to assume that she's fully into Matt, right? That she wants to be with him and is happy about that. And just imagine that for us, just imagine you and me, if you're in a long-term relationship and you love your partner, and for whatever reason, there's video footage of the previous relationships you were in where you were totally into that person and they rejected you. And imagine that your partner watches that. Like, I'm just thinking about I guess for myself, if I'm trying to relate to Colleen, imagine, people that I dated prior to being with my wife. And I guess for some of you people that think of me as Mr. Rogers, that might be hard to accept and swallow that somehow I dated other people. But anyway, and in those, I'm old, so a lot of things have happened in my life, and if we just had these video snippets of me with these other people, and I knew that my wife had seen these snippets, and there were moments where I was very upset that a relationship wasn't working out with someone or something, and the other person was rejecting me. And what do I tell my wife about that? Now, I would hope that people would say, like, well, life is meandering and there's a lot of different paths in life, and I'm very, very happy that our paths cross and we finally are with each other. So you don't have to completely rework history on that level, but you could see also making a choice of just like, well, I was kind of deluded then. And I could see myself saying stuff like that. Just like, well, I was young. I was 14 years old. I mean, what did I know about life? The relationship felt good, but I had no ability to evaluate whether or not that was the good or if that was just a good, if that makes sense. And so, for Colleen, she's trying to make the narrative fit her life, whether it's conscious or not. Like I was saying, could be that she just is like, but I'm in love with Matt and I should be with my wife. And when she watches it, she's like, I don't understand. What was I thinking with? There must be some explanation as to why I was upset with Cole, because certainly I shouldn't have been with him. That's ridiculous. So, but I don't know. What do you think?
Felt like, yeah, that might be boring to some people, but that doesn't mean that I don't deserve love. And I felt in that moment that he was judging me just for not going deep, whatever that meant. So it was more of a pride thing when he broke up with me, because I was like, you know what? I want to break up with you before you break up with me, So at that time,
no, that is fast.
Yeah. So at the time, it looks, I get it from an audience standpoint, but when me and Matt think about it, Matt was always my number one, and then I had a number two that wasn't Matt or Cole and Brennan. It was someone else.
Okay, so we just heard specifically that Matt was number one, this other fellow was number two, and then Brennan and Cole were 3 and 4. Okay.
So Matt was initially the top of your list.
Matt was always number one. Yeah, and people won't believe me, but it is what it is. I remember day one,
Yeah, I mean, she acknowledges. She's like, people won't believe. And even Jalea Slay's, what's his name? Anthony, is it? Anthony seems skeptical.
But when me and Matt think about it, Matt was always my number one, and then I had a number two that wasn't Matt, or Cole and Brennan. It was someone else. So
Oh, so Matt was initially the top of your list.
Matt was always number one.
Oh,
Yeah, and people won't believe me, but it is what it is. Matt was, I remember day one, someone asked me.
Now, of course, what I'm guessing a lot of y'all are thinking is it really the story? Is it really her? If the story is changing to fit the narrative that her and Matt should be together, is it because she wants to do that, or is it because she is being abused by Matt, or she's worried about abuse, and so she's just making the story up to avoid being abused? There's no direct evidence of that, of course. There were indications during the season that there were some issues there, potential problems there. But we don't know what their relationship was like the whole time. We don't know what their relationship has been since the show ended. And I remember during the reunion, she looked so uncomfortable, and he was physically kind of containing her or dominating her. And I know enough about humans to know that we can't just look at that and know what's really happening. A lot of people were concerned. I had some very minor concerns or minor questions, I suppose. If something is happening, then of course I'm concerned, but I don't have strong indications. I mean, all the relationship, Brennan and Alexa could have problems and concerns that I don't know about. Believe me, I've treated a lot of couples where on the surface things seem totally fine. Even to me, given an inside look on the relationship, I'll still think, yeah, this relationship has some issues, but it's normal kind of stuff. Years down the line, something is revealed and it's a factual thing. Like there's no ambiguity about it that reveals something to me that is very problematic, and I will be blindsided. I'll be like, whoa, and the first few times that happened in my career, I would kick myself and beat myself up for not knowing it. And then over time, I was like, well, no, I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a God. I can't see people's lives. I can only go off of what they show me. And there's no human on the planet that can read people's minds, that can know what's really happening. You can only go off what people give you and what they're even willing to accept themselves, right? So, who knows? But there is that possibility that for Colleen, okay. So who knows about Colleen? But there's a universe in which, and there are couples out there where, say, there's a lot of jealousy and a lot of emotional abuse, potential physical abuse. Who knows? And the victim is terrified of being abused, and thus will desperately try to change the narrative. Like all those. It'll go as far as the victim of the abuse will, because the person, and I've seen this before clinically and personally, by the way. So someone's being abused, and the victim will be trying to get out of being abused, and the perpetrator will say, "You had sex with that person, didn't you? I know it. Or you like that person, I know it." And the victim, in all their different ways of trying to avoid being abused, which makes sense, they might even throw out allegations about previous partners that aren't true. Things like, I was coerced, I was assaulted by that person, even though that isn't true. Because it's a way out, because they know that if they can convince the perpetrator that they didn't want to be with that person, then it can. Now, sometimes that can backfire and actually cause the perpetrator to be like, well, you let yourself, anyway. So in no way do we know that that's happening with Matt and Colleen. But I'm guessing some of y'all are like, aren't you going to throw that out as an hypothesis? So there's thousands of hypotheses.
Always my number one, and then I had a number two that wasn't Matt, or Cole and Brennan. It was someone else. So
so Matt was initially the top of your list.
Matt was always number one. Yeah, and people won't believe me, but it is what it is. Matt was, I remember day one, someone asked me, who's your number one? And I sat there and I was like, Matt. And for this past year and a half, I thought you were going to see that, like me talking about how much I liked Matt on day one, because I thought that would be really cool to see how I'm talking about him, and then I marry him.
Okay, there's no reason to disbelieve that she says on day one. Now, could that have changed? I don't think. I don't. Yeah. Could she have said Matt number one? Absolutely, because you know they keep a list. They have that notebook that they're always keeping track, and we could imagine a world in which Colleen has Matt at the top of the list, and then as the days go on, Matt is not at the top of the list. Or Matt was always at the top of the list.
And then that just gets completely cut. So it is what it is. But yeah, Matt was always my number one throughout the pods.
Because I do feel like when we were like watching it back, like at the beginning, you were taking like a lot of heat from the public about, I guess mostly it was like about the ballerina and the flexibility thing. Mm-hmm. But I felt like there was like a change after the Malibu situation. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm sure you're probably like tired to death of talking about this, but
I
don't. So when you were watching that back,
and by the way, I've heard from others, and during the Alexa interview with Anthony Gillette, they were talking about how Colleen had experienced a lot of bullying online. And I'm trying to imagine why that would be. Why would people go after Colleen of all people? And from my understanding, people were attacking her saying that she wasn't anything special, that she wasn't more beautiful than Zeneb or something like that. And they were attacking her because she was showing off because she's a ballerina and that she's always talking about that. And I just don't understand why anyone would really go after anyone on the show, but Colleen, really? Why would anyone say anything other than just like, you seem like a nice person, I hope you're okay? The other thing I'm sure people were going after were people saying they were sure that she was being abused. And I'm just like, people, you do not know that shit. Shut up. Like, these are real human beings. If you want to talk about Kylo Ren and Rey, well, they get together and you want to spout off online about that sort of stuff, or, you know who killed JR, for you old people out there, then fine. Those are fictional characters. That's what happened to Tony Soprano at the end of the series. Okay, fine. These are fictional characters. Talk. This is a real human being. You don't know. You don't know anything. And just be quiet. Or frame it as such. I mean, that's what I do. I frame everything. I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know anything about what's really happening with these people. Because I don't know. How in the world would I know? How would anyone know? And for people to bully her and go after her, it's deplorable. It's just deplorable. And if you ever see that, I hope that you stand up for these people. I hope you don't participate in it. I'm not chastising you. I'm upset at the bullies. If you can do something about it, do something about it. If doing something about it will cause them to bully you, then don't do something about it, I suppose. But that kind of stuff needs to stop, and that's a cultural thing, When there are cultural movements and they don't experience any pushback or any limits, then they just do whatever the hell they want to do. And so we need to do what we can as the majority of people, I assume, who wouldn't bully Colleen. So when the minority of individuals do that, we need to put that to an end. That needs to fucking stop, people. Like, people were bullying her. Not okay.
There was a lot of other stuff that was said where I do say, and I mentioned it in the reunion, that there's a reason why we didn't work out, and there's a reason why me and Matt were together and why him and Zeneb were together. I thought in my head that I had shut it down, and I now see that I should have shut it down like Raven. Like, I wish I had Raven's confidence in just being like, no, sorry, I'm not having it. Where I have a tendency to like placate other people's emotions, and I don't.
Right. So that plays into some of the yellow flags I was talking about earlier, in terms of not knowing what you need, not knowing what you want. Who knows? But based on what I was talking about in terms of connection with the self, if it's true, and it stands to reason that during the pool scene, she was locked in with Matt. And this, she's like, yeah, Cole, whatever. These are just previous people that I dated, but Matt's the one. And she's in the pool, and Cole is having a lot of energy with her. And it was pretty one-directional. That Colleen, the first time I saw that scene, it kind of seemed like they were flirting with each other equally. But upon seeing the rest of the season and rewatching that scene, it looks more like she is placating, honestly. And he's the one generating the conversation, and she's kind of like agreeing or something like that. And she is in that moment, and if she were in connection with herself, and so here's the equation, to break it down into an equation, is the person right in front of me, Cole, once is having a lot of energy towards me, is saying that he's attracted to me. And the best thing I can say to him to please him, since he's the one filling my field of vision and my emotional attention right now, a nice thing to say to him would be to reciprocate, because that's what he wants, and he's right here, he's happening right now. And anyone would have felt that in her shoes. But if you're in connection with yourself, you have a more robust connection with yourself, you would say, but that actually is against who I am and what I want. What I want is a good relationship with Matt. I want that. And I actually want to be with Matt. I don't want to be with Cole. I also want to please Cole, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. I also don't want to hurt his feelings. That's okay. But there's a lot of things on my equation. There's a lot of factors playing into what I should do next. There is, I don't want to hurt Cole's feelings. I want to please Cole. That's fine. But I also don't want to hurt Matt. And I also don't want to betray my integrity. And I want to be able to face Matt, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to reciprocate right now. That's the equation. So if you don't have a connection with yourself, if you don't have a spontaneous emerge, because it's not that if someone had a greater connection with themselves in that moment, I suspect they wouldn't even have to really check in with themselves. They'd just be like, okay, I don't want to hurt his feelings, but there are much bigger things afoot than hurting his feelings. So I guess I got to hurt his feelings, and I got to be like, oh, well, okay, thanks, Cole. But if you're not in connection with that, then all you do is please other people. And there's some evidence, there's some yellow flags of that throughout the season. And this is an example of that. And she's basically admitting to that. She's like, I was just trying to please him. But just imagine that, right? Just imagine that your partner would do that, that if you're not around and someone is seriously hitting on them, because they don't want to hurt the person's feelings, they reciprocate. Like, you would hope that your partner wouldn't do that, right? Not because Colleen is a jerk face, but possibly because she doesn't have as robust of a connection with what her needs are and what she wants and the foundation of her life. But I don't know. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.